All right, I am recording. Just for future reference, the purpose of this recording is so that I can refer back to it. Over the course of this recording, my attempt will be to explain how to understand the Greek language, specifically chapters 11 and possibly 11 and up in the 4th edition of Basics of Biblical Greek, written by William D. Mounts. So we are starting in I think we should be starting in chapter 11 here. Let's see here. Oh, no, it'll be starting in chapter 10. And so I'm just going to record this for about an hour, and my purpose is to be able to refer back to it and listen to it on the car ride, and just use it whenever I need to, anytime I need to study for this particular material. Alright, so starting with Section 3 Overview, this is a general overview of chapters 10 through 14. And I will read this and try to explain it and remember it as best as I can, because while I am teaching it, I'm also kind of learning it as I go, so I might make another video that's a bit more concise. This will be kind of my rambling, but for the time being, here we go. Chapter 10. Third declension words have stems ending in a consonant. There are three things you need to know. Number one, it is common for the final letter of the stem to be altered by the case ending in the nominative singular and dative plural. The stem sark changes to sarx when the s is added in the nominative singular, which is the same case ending as in logos. Because the nominative singular form looks different from first and second declension forms, it is easy to think that third declension words are totally different. They are not. Okay, so just looking over this, boiling it down really quick. It is common for the final letter of the stem to be altered by the case ending in the nominative singular and the dative plural. So basically, in the first and second declension words, they all follow a pretty similar pattern. But with third declension words, with the nominative singular, okay, and with the dative plural, the endings get mixed up a bit. So when we're reading about sark and sarx, so the stem is sark. So for other forms, you would have like, sarkos, words like that. It goes sark and then the endings. So sarkos, sarkes. I don't remember all the endings off the top of my head, but you should know those reasonably well. At least we'll go over them. But with the nominative singular and with the dative plural, it's going to be changed up. So with nominative singular, it's not going to be, sark, like sarka or anything like that. It's going to be sarks. It's going to have a different letter there at the end. That letter's, what is that? C, I believe, is the last letter of that one. Okay, so number 2. The key is to memorize the genitive singular. It shows the stem of the word. The genitive singular of sark is sarkos. Drop off the os case ending, and you have the stem, which again would be sark. I'm going to plug in my computer here really quick because it's running low on battery. So let me do this here really quick. Okay, there we go. And yeah. And then number 3, as you see from the genitive sarkos and the dative plural sarxi, third declension words use a few alternate case endings. So as you see, third declension words use a few alternative case endings. Yeah, I think that just is what it is. Continuing in chapter 10, other things happen as well, especially in the nominative singular. For example, the stem pont becomes pos because nt drop out before the s. So pont plus s equals pos. And we learned about that, or I should say we will learn about that here in a little bit. Like T is a dental word, and all dental words will lose their, what would that be? I guess that would be a dental consonant. They drop off, and then you're just left with the S. So for this example, pont becomes pos. It loses the N and the T. Yeah, the trick here is to realize that third declension words are not really that different from other words. You must memorize the stems. Okay, so that's chapter 10. The overview for chapter 11. We finally meet the full paradigm of the first and second person personal pronouns, those being ego and su. So the first and second personal pronouns, ego and su. You have already learned most of the grammar pertaining to pronouns, so there's not much new in this chapter. You will also learn a few more third declension sub-patterns, but nothing too earth-shaking. Yeah, so I don't remember a ton from this chapter. Yeah, I know that it's about ego and su, there's a good chance that I forgot some stuff, but I think mostly it just has to do with the different, how do you say it, the different forms of saying ego and su. So, there's, why don't I take a peek over that just so I can review what exactly I'm talking about here. Yeah, so there's a couple different forms for saying these. Like there's ego, which is the only one that really sounds like itself. Everything else kind of sounds a little bit different. So there's ego, and then there's mu, moi, me, ames, amon, amen, and amos. So that's ego, and those are first person. So ego is I, mu is my, moi is to me, me is me, and then su is second person, so it means you. So there's su, then there's su again, but instead of sigma upsilon, it's sigma omicron upsilon. So it sounds the same, but it's spelled different. So there's su, which is you, su, which is your, soy, se, and then umes, umon, umin, and umas. Okay, so those are all su. And I would imagine there's a few grammatical things to learn there, but I mean, it looks like it's fairly small chapter. Yeah, there's a little bit to learn here, but not a ton. Mostly just dealing with those two words. Okay, so chapter 10 has to do with dealing with third declension in general. Chapter 11 has to do with mostly the words ego and su, those being first and second personal pronouns. And chapter 12, it says this chapter focuses on autos. You have already learned it as the third person personal pronoun, and this is by far its predominant use. However, it can function two other ways as well. Third person personal pronoun, by far the most predominant use, however, it can function in two other ways as well. Okay, so I'm trying to remember what all it's talking about here. Third person personal pronoun. I've already learned it. Yeah, that's right. I've already learned that. So that's talking about how autos is he, aute is she, auta is it. So I already know those words. And so then we're going to be going over the different forms and the different ways in which you can use those ones, because I can't remember exactly how much of that I've learned. This is kind of difficult because these are all chapters that I've learned. I've learned them and then I've forgotten them, so I'm trying to remember some stuff from some previous chapters and some stuff that I don't know. This is pretty much a big game of catch up at this point, so that's something worth bearing in mind. Anyway, I'm unnecessarily narrating. By far its predominant use. Okay. Autos in the predicate position carries an intensive meaning. Autos ha apostolos means the apostle himself. Again, autos, there's the pronoun. Ha, there's the article. And then apostolos, there's the noun. So, pronoun, article, noun means the apostle himself. Autos ha apostolos means the apostle himself. When used this way, autos normally modifies the subject. So one last time. Pronoun, article, noun. That means the apostle himself. So pronoun, article, noun would be translated article, noun, pronoun. And the second thing here is autos in the attributive position is the identical adjective meaning same. So Ha autos logos means the same word. Again, that would be ha autos logos means the same word. Put differently, article, pronoun, noun would be translated as article. Let's see. I guess that would be, yeah, pronoun, maybe, noun. Ha autos logos means the same word. So let's go through this one more time, just so I really get this locked in. Autos in the predicate position, predicate position means an intensive meaning, carries an intensive meaning. Autos ha apostolos means the apostle himself. When used in this way, autos normally modifies the subject. Okay. So I'm guessing that these are two additional things that I'm learning here. So there's the usual way that I had learned it previously, which is, yeah, which I guess that would be just a regular old pronoun, you know, he, she, it. Whereas this is talking about some different ways that you can use that to make it mean something a little bit different. So instead of, you know, you would think if you were translating it directly for this first one, autos ha apostolos, you would think that that would be he, the apostle. But that doesn't really make sense, you know, to translate. And so instead you would translate it as the apostle himself. Autos ha apostolos, you would think that would be he, the apostle, because if you translated it word for word, that's what it would mean. Autos is he, ha is the, apostolos is apostle. But instead, because that doesn't make any sense, you would kind of scramble the words around, and it would be the apostle himself. And again, that is autos in the predicate position. So I'll read this one more time. Maybe we're beating a dead horse, but I think this is worth going over. Autos in the predicate position carries an intensive meaning. Autos ha apostolos means the apostle himself. When used this way, autos normally modifies the subject. Okay. And that second one again, autos in the attributive position is the identical adjective meaning same. So if it's in the attributive position, it means same. So to translate, ha autos logos means the same word. Now, autos becomes same. That's worth knowing because I would not naturally translate it that way if I didn't know this fact. So ha autos logos, I would think off the top of my head that that would be the he word, and that doesn't make any sense. The he word, that makes no sense whatsoever. So it's very important that I remember this bit about the attributive position. So ha autos logos, to put it a different way, if it says article, pronoun, noun in that order, so article, pronoun, noun, that means you're going to change that pronoun to the word same. So ha autos logos means the same word, not the he word, the same word. Okay. So I think that's a pretty thorough stripping down of chapter 12. All right, moving on to chapter 13. And again, these are just the overviews. This is not an in-depth study. This is the overview. Chapter 13. You now meet the demonstratives. You have already met one of them, outos. I'm trying to remember here. Oh yeah, it just says it right here. Outos means this, or these in the plural. I do remember that. Yeah, I remember that. So outos means this or these, and akanos, which I believe is a new word for this chapter, means that, or those in the plural. So outos is this and these, akanos is that and those. The peculiarity of these words is that when used adjectively, they are in the predicate position. Let's chew on that for a second. The peculiarity of these words being outos and akanos, is that when used adjectively, so when they are used as an adjective, they are in the predicate position. Okay, so Utos ha anthropos means this person, not this is the person. Okay. So that's interesting because if I was just looking at utos ha anthropos, I would think that meant this the person. This the person, or I guess as the book points out, you would likely translate that as this is the person because you would have to stick that is in there. Sometimes you have to stick an is in there because Greek, I don't know if it doesn't have it or sometimes it neglects it. I don't know. Not important. Utos ha anthropos would be this person. So I guess what that's saying is you basically just drop that article. Because if it wasn't for that article in the middle, that's just what I would naturally think. I would think utos anthropos would be this person. But instead it would be utos ha anthropos. Okay, so let's read this again. The peculiarity of these words being utos and akenos, is that when used adjectively, that's as an adjective, they are in the predicate position. Okay. The demonstratives can also be used as pronouns. Sometimes you will have to provide an extra word for it to make sense. Akene could mean that woman. The demonstratives can also be used as pronouns. Okay, yeah, because these words that we're learning here, utos and akenos, again, these are demonstratives. That's the name of these words. They can also be used as pronouns. Sometimes you will have to provide an extra word for it to make sense. Akene could mean that woman. And that makes sense because akene, if it wasn't working as a pronoun, that would just mean that. But it would have to be a woman that you were adding there because akene, because that little that eta at the end, we know that that's a feminine word. So whatever it's talking about, whatever the that is, it's a feminine word. And so it would make sense if you need, like, if this is operating as a pronoun, that would imply that it is a woman that we are talking about. Or maybe like, I don't know, like a feminine animal of some kind, but it would probably be a woman. Okay. You may also translate them as personal pronouns. Building off of what I've just said. You may also translate them as personal pronouns, depending on the needs of the context. Akene could be she. You may also translate them as personal pronouns, that being he, she, it, depending on the needs of the context. Akene could be she. So Akene could be that woman, or it could be she, because that she wouldn't really make sense, so you'd probably just say she. And then last little strip of text here. You will also learn a few odds and ends, such as the vocative case, used when directly addressing a person. For the most case, it looks like the nominative. And I'm going to take a peek at that really quick because I remember learning about it. Vocative, it's what you would, it's what you would use if you were addressing a person directly. Yeah. Okay. Should I read this? Yeah, I'm just gonna read it. We'll be having fun here. The fifth and final case is the vocative, the case of direct address. A noun uses vocative case endings when it is being directly addressed. In the following example, the person is addressing the Lord directly. So this is ou pas ha legon moi, and then it underlines this bit right here. Kyrie. And Kyrie would be the vocative form of the word kurios, which means Lord. Continuing, Kyrie. Let's see, what is this word? Aseleusutai. I don't know if that's a word, but Astein basileon ton uranon. Not everyone saying to me, Lord, Lord, will enter the kingdom of heaven. That's the word, that's the sentence that was translated. So Kyrie is Lord, Lord. So the people who, people who are addressing the Lord, they're saying, Lord, Lord. They're addressing him directly, and they will not enter the kingdom of heaven. So that's a bummer for them. But yeah, the forms of the vocative, for the most part, are quite simple. It is usually obvious from context when the word is in the vocative. Okay. Yeah, we could elaborate on this a little bit later. Let's see. But yeah, that's chapter 13. So just to refresh, chapter 13, we're talking about third declension words and about how the last word at the end is going to change. The last letter at the end, sorry. Assuming that it's in the singular nominative or dative plural. Chapter 11 pretty much just talking about ego and su, so we're going to have to memorize those different forms. Hopefully that won't take too long. Chapter 12 talking about autos. Autos obviously means he, and in its various forms it can also mean she, it, and some other things. But just to reiterate, when it is in the predicate position, it would mean the pronoun would imply a certain level of himself. So, autos ha apostolos means the apostle himself. It is not he the apostle, it is the apostle himself. So that should hopefully be pretty self-explanatory when we're translating, because he the apostle doesn't make a lot of sense, so hopefully I'll have the memory to remember this little strip here, and I'll switch them around as needed. And the last bit for chapter 12 is if it's in the attributive position, it's going to mean same. So ha autos logos does not mean the he word, it means the same word. So that pronoun there gets changed into the word same. Okay, what we've just discussed, chapter 13, talking about utos and akanos, which again, utos means this and these, akanos means that and those. So talking about the predicate position, utos ha anthropos means this person, not this is the person. I would naturally translate that as this the person, which I would probably put is in there, so I would like to say this is the person, but that would be incorrect because it is in the predicate position. What does predicate position mean? That is an interesting question. Does it say anywhere? Intensive, identical adjective. What am I looking at here? Predicate position. Doesn't look like there's any obvious answer. It does have the demonstrative in the article and the noun. And again, demonstrative is utos and akanos, meaning this, these, that, and those. So if it's demonstrative, article, noun, I guess you would drop the article. Yeah. I mean, it makes sense from what I'm looking at here. Anyways. And then we learned a bit about pronouns, how these words can be used to mean a pronoun. So bear that in mind whenever I'm translating. Just remember, hey, this could be a pronoun if I wanted it to be. That's really what would make sense. Then let's see here. Yeah, and then a little bit about the vocative case. And then finally, chapter 14. The last major topic to learn is the noun in the noun system is the relative pronoun. So who/whom, not when asking a question, that in one of its uses, and which. So let me read that again because that was a little confusing. The last major topic to learn in the noun system is the relative pronoun. Then it gives an example of relative pronoun, quote, who or whom, end quote. Then in parentheses it says, not when asking a question. So who or whom would be a relative pronoun, not when you're asking a question. So when you're saying who is whatever, who kicked me in the shin, that's not what we're talking about here. We're just talking about who and whom, not in a question. Then another example of a relative pronoun is that, then in parentheses, in one of its uses, in parentheses, and, quote, which. So the words that we're learning here are who and whom, that, and which. These are the relative pronouns. The word the relative pronoun points back to is its antecedent. The word the relative pronoun points back to is its antecedent. So one more time. The word the relative pronoun points back to, so whatever, who and whom, that, and which is referring to, that would be the antecedent. So remember that. The relative pronoun introduces a relative clause that will have its own subject and verb. It is it is a dependent construction, either modifying something, for example, the book that is open on the table is too expensive, or performing a function. Whoever is not for me is against me. So let's chew on that for a second. Okay, the relative pronoun, that being who, whom, that, and which, introduces a relative clause that will have its own subject and verb. Okay. So, relative clause is going to have its own subject and its own verb, and it is created or introduced by the relative pronoun who, whom, that, which. It is a dependent construction, either modifying something or performing a function. Okay, so let's look at these examples for a second. The book, and then in italics, that is open on the table, in italics, is too expensive. So, that is open on the table would be the relative clause. So, that is open on the table. That has its own subject, that has its own verb, but you can't just have it as a sentence. So, it is introduced by the relative pronoun. The book that is open on the table is too expensive. It could also be performing a function. In italics, whoever is not for me is against. Whoever is not for me, in italics, is against me. So whoever is not for me has a subject, has a verb, but it is dependent on the rest of the sentence. So yeah, what's introducing these? So for this first sentence, that is open on the table. I guess that would, yeah, because that is one of the relative pronouns. And then the second one, whoever. So who, that would be the relative pronoun that introduces the rest of it. Continuing on to the next and final strip of text here, the case of the relative pronoun is determined by its function inside the relative clause. Its number and gender are determined by its antecedent. Again, the case of the relative pronoun is determined by its function inside the relative clause. So the case, talking about the case, so what is the word going to look like? Of the relative pronoun, that being who, whom, that, which, is determined by its function inside the relative clause. So that would imply it's not the sentence itself, but it's the relative clause. So what is this word's function within this relative clause? That's going to determine what its case is. Its number and gender are determined by its antecedent. So going back to that a little bit towards the top, the word the relative pronoun points back to is its antecedent, and the relative pronouns number and gender are determined by its antecedent. So I want to make sure I really understand this here. Think I get what it's saying, yeah. So who, whom, that, which, they typically, or I guess all the time, are going to introduce a relative clause which is dependent on the rest of the sentence. It's going to be like a little mini sentence stuck inside of a bigger sentence, but it's isolated. And so it's not too worried about whatever else is going on outside of that sentence, because that relative pronoun, its case, is entirely determined by that antecedent which is whatever it's connected to. So let me look at this example here. So this first one, that is open on the table. What would that be? What would that be referring to? It would either be open or table. The book that is open on the table. I would think it would be open, but my gut says that it's table, so I'm not sure. I'm gonna have to go over that. Then for this other one, whoever is not for me, that's the relative clause. Whoever, I guess that would be is. Would is be the antecedent? It's saying whoever is not for me, and then continuing the sentence is against me. Is or is not, because I wouldn't think it would be for me. I don't know, maybe it is. I would think that the examples here would be. To me, it seems when you're reading the book, here's the bit that is open on the table. I would think we're talking about the book here before we have this relative pronoun introducing a relative clause. I would think that the focus would be on the fact that the book is open, but I'm going to stop talking now because I don't really know what I'm talking about. Anyways, so yeah, here's a video of me not fully understanding the overview, but trying to chew on it a little bit, and then maybe I can listen to this while I'm driving the car and chew on it a little bit. So there you go. Thumbs up. See ya. Might make another one that's a little bit more thorough. We'll see.